Hello everyone. Today we are going to be doing a review on MTH's brand new URSA Heavy Pacific. The model that we have right in front of us is the Baltimore, Ohio P7 variant. They made a few different road names, but we'll go over that in a little bit. To start things off, let's talk about a little bit of history on the real Baltimore, Ohio P7. So the P7 was a 462 type steam locomotive. In case if you don't know what 462 means, it means for the wheel configuration on the engine. So this means we have 4 wheels up on the lead truck, 6 drivers, and 2 wheels underneath the firebox for support. Now, Pacifics were the primary passenger locomotive of almost every major railroad. In fact, I'm pretty sure every single major railroad at some point owned Pacifics, and they have been in operation for well over 50 years in revenue service. However, later on in their career, the Pacifics would be later replaced by the 464 Hudsons, the 482 Mountain types, and the 484 Northerns. So this caused the Pacifics to be downgraded to local freight and passenger duties until being retired in the mid to late 1950s. Today, there is a ton of Pacifics still around. In fact, they're the most preserved type of steam engine, and a handful of them are still in operation today. Now that we talked about the 462 type engines, let's go into the history of the P7 itself. The Baltimore, Ohio P7 is a class of 462 President class locomotives built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in 1927. The reason why they were called the President class is because each locomotive was named after one of the first 20 presidents of the United States. However, I'm not going to go into all the names. A grand total of 20 locomotives were built, and they were numbered 5300 to 5319, with a boiler pressure of 230 psi, 80-inch diameter driving wheels, and massive 27 by 28-inch cylinders. These locomotives could produce a tractive effort of 50,000 pounds. With the engine and tender combined, they weighed 544,000 pounds, and they carried a water capacity of 11,000 gallons and a coal capacity of 16 tons. They would be painted in a rich olive green paint scheme and later received the royal blue scheme in the 1940s. During that time, they also got their names removed, and the place where the name was replaced with the engine's row number. The P7s would pull the train like the Washingtonian, the Cincinnatian, the Royal Blue, and the Capital Limited until the 1950s, when they were later downgraded to secondary passenger service and freight trains. It was also the time where they're renumbered into the 100 series to not get confused with the newly delivered EMD diesels that will be renumbered to the 5000 series. By 1958, all but one of these engines were scrapped. Baltimore, Ohio number 5300, also known as President Washington, currently resides at the Baltimore, Ohio Rail Museum in Baltimore, Maryland, currently getting a cosmetic restoration. Now that you know the history on the P7, let's talk about this model. This new variation of MTH's Heavy Pacific came out in the 2021 All Skills catalog, and these engines started shipping last month. Now, they made about 12 different versions of this engine. We have the Baltimore, Ohio, as you see here. We have a Gulf Mobile in Ohio, a Boston and Maine, Maine Central, Pittsburgh and West Virginia, 2 Southern variations, 2 Pennsylvania versions, a U.S. Army variation, the Alton Limited version, and finally a Reading and Northern. There is actually more variations of this engine, but they're custom runs being done by other model train dealers, so chances are you might find an engine that you like. The features on this engine include a fan-driven smoke unit for the main stack and one for the whistle steam smoke effect, Protosound 3.0, all LED lighting, wireless drawbar, real coal load, and all die-cast construction. Now, the length of this engine is around 23 inches. It's about 24 inches if you count the couplers. And with that length, you may think that this engine can handle tight curves, and you'd be right. The minimum curve for this engine is 0.42 radius, So you can pretty much run this engine on just about any layout. There are a couple ways to run this engine. You can either run it with the MTH DCS command system, as that will give you access to all of the engine's advanced features. You can also run it with two-rail operation with DCC, which some people do that, or you can also run it conventionally with just a transformer and some track. This engine is packed with great detail, so let's go ahead and take a closer look. Here's a look on the front of the locomotive. We have some nice suicide steps on either side of the cow catcher. We have a coupler cup bar up here with a chain and pin that goes into a dummy scale coupler. And if you want, you can double head the engine by swapping out that scale coupler for a dummy O-gauge coupler that's packaged with the engine when you buy it. Moving up to the walkway, we have some safety tread detailing right here, here, and here. Now the walkways, they go all the way back to the cab, and they all have safety tread on them. And on each side we have some separately applied stairs. Here's a look on the front of the boiler. We have some separately applied grab irons on either side. We have some more grab irons right here and here. We have a curved metal grab iron on the bottom. Then we have some separately applied operational class lamps on either side. We have a number plate right here that's currently sitting on the operational headlight with light and number boards on either side. And in the middle, we have the separately applied capital dome emblem. Here's a look on the sides of the engine. We have a separately applied handrail that goes all the way back to the cab. There's one on each side, so there's one here and here. Then we have the pilot wheels, which are very nicely detailed with the brake shoes and the inside of the wheels. Then we have the drive wheels and the drive rods, and all this stuff looks amazing when the engine is in motion. You'll see that in just a few minutes. And above the drivers, we have some nice molded in and separately applied detail. Towards the rear of the engine, we have a pilot truck right here. Now, what I like about this engine is that all the wheels are painted blue to match the engine's body. We have a separately applied piping right here. We have some nice firebox detailing. We have a crisp 5307 and the classification right there. We have some clear plastic inserts in the windows. We have a little grab iron right there that's separately applied, and then we have separately applied handrails on either side of the cab. Now, inside the cab, there's two hand-painted crew figures. The back head is nicely detailed with hand-painted valves and gauges, and there's a cab light in the engine, and that cab light does shut off when the engine starts moving. Here's a look on the left-hand side of the engine, and it looks pretty much the same as the right-hand side, but we do have some differences in detail. On top of the engine, we have the smokestack, and to fill up the smoke unit, you simply pour the smoke fluid directly down the stack. Behind the smokestack, we have a separately applied brass bell, really nice. And if you look inside the bell, there's a clapper, which I think is a really neat feature. And just like all MTH steam engines, the pull cord goes all the way back to the cab. Behind the bell, we have a nicely detailed sand dome. We have some molded in piping that goes down from that dome. Right here, we have some pop-off valves and a whistle right here. Now, there's a hole in the whistle for the whistle steam smoke effect. So what happens on this engine is when you blow the whistle, smoke shoots out of that hole, and it gives the illusion of steam shooting out of the whistle, which is really cool. Now, to fill up the smoke unit, you have to take off this dome right here and put your smoke fluid directly down the stack. And once you're done, you just put the dome back on. Behind the whistle, there's a lanyard from the whistle that goes all the way back to the cab. We have some nice molded and detailing right here. We have a dynamo generator right there. And if you look on the cab, there's some nice rivet detailing, and there's this little vent that you can open up like that. Here's a look on the gap between the engine and the tender. We have the separately applied grab irons on the tender and the engine. We have a little deck plate that goes in between the engine and tender to give it a more realistic look. Then underneath the engine, we have the wireless drawbar that these engines have. Here's a look on the inside of the cab. We have the separately applied hand-painted crew figures, as I mentioned. We have a very nicely detailed back head with hand-painted valves and gauges. We have a separately applied metal curtain right there. And right here, we have the firebox glow, which you can see when the engine's moving. Okay, now let's go and check out the tender. On the top of the tender, we have some nice door detailing right there. On top of this tender, we have some nice safety tread detailing, some nice separately applied steps on either side. We have some nice truck detailing with the separately applied chains that are added to it. We have a crisp Baltimore, Ohio logo, and we have a lot of rivet detailing along the side. One last thing I want to mention about the side of the tender is that if you look underneath, there's some detailing right there, and there's a separately applied water scoop under there, which I think is a really cool feature. On top of the tender, we have a real coal load right here, and yes, this is real pieces of coal inside the tender. Then we have some nice rivet detailing on top. We have this piece here which I don't know what that piece is. Then we have a little water hatch that opens, and inside the hatch is the volume control for the engine. Here's a look on the back of the tender. We have the electrocoupler that can be fired from the DCS or transformer. We have another separately applied coupler cup bar, a nice metal ladder that goes up to the tender. We have some signage right here, the water capacity and coal capacity, and we have a operational backup light. Alright, before we start this engine up, I want to mention my favorite feature on this engine. My favorite feature of the P7 is actually the paint scheme on the engine. If you didn't know, blue is my favorite color, and I really like how the blue turned out on this thing. So yeah, my favorite feature on this engine is the paint scheme. Alright, let's go ahead and start it up. Now I'm going to use the extended startup sequence on this engine.
Check on that water level, will you? Swing that boat over. Water level's down 300. Okay, that's enough. Let's grease up the side rod. Looks good. What do you see? I'm going to blow her down now. Clear? Clear.
Okay, first up, let's check out the whistle. And here you can see the whistle seam smoke effect right there. Now this thing also has a quilling whistle, and that is done by pressing the SPW key. When you click on it says whistle, and you use the quick wheel to go through the whistle sounds, like this.
Alrighty, tell them to close that up.
Then this engine also has some preset whistles. Here's the forward signal, the reverse signal, and here's the crossing signal. The last thing that's related to the whistle is how to access the whistle steam. So you go on your DCS and you click the FSW key,
She seems real good.
and it'll highlight it.
What do you see?
And when you blow the whistle, smoke will come out of the whistle. You don't have to have the main auxiliary smoke and the stack smoke on in order for the whistle steam to work, so you can have the smoke stack smoke off, and you can just blow the smoking whistle, which I think is a really cool feature. Here's the bell.
You better drop off our outlaws at the next stop.
Alright, let's go ahead and move her on out.
stop is Cumberland.
Have a good one.
You too.
Let me grab that for you.
Thank you. Excuse me, sir. You dropped something.
Thank you. Pardon me.
Now departing for Cleveland on track 1, train number 21, the Washingtonian.
Pardon me. Hurry up now. Let me grab that for you. Tickets out, folks. All aboard! Careful on the steps now.
Hurry up. We're gonna miss our train.
We're ready. Tell them to close that up. I see the conductor checking his watch again. Must be time to go. Okay, set it off. I'm going to blow her down now. Clear? Clear. Take care. See you soon.
Okay, that about wraps it up for this review. This is a beautiful locomotive. I'm happy to own it, and so far for the first 2 days, I have been running this thing non-stop. So if you're interested in purchasing one of these, the retail price is around $1,299.99. But if you go through a good MTH dealer, you should be able to get a pretty good discount off that retail price. I got my P7 from Pat's Trains, and he has a few more of these left in stock, so feel free to check their store out. Anyways, that's it for now. This is Brendan's Trains, and I'll see you in the next video.